My name is Abby Parks, and I'm the president of the board of the Southeastern Regional Folk Alliance. And I'd like to welcome you right now to the SERFA Awards. This year, we are honoring 5 people, 3 of whom were slated to receive an award in 2020. And that was the year that we had to cancel our conference in person due to the pandemic. Our 2020 recipients are Ed Snodderly, William Ferris, and Barry Poss. And we also have 2 2021 recipients. They are Deidre McCalla and David Holt. In 2014, SERFA founder and 6-time conference director Kari Estrin wanted to acknowledge those in the Southeast who've made a significant contribution to the region by creating an award to highlight their unique and impactful work. In 2014, she created the Kari Estrin Founding President's Award for outstanding contributions to music and culture in the Southeast. Over the next 3 years, recipients included the Highlander Center in Tennessee, where Pete Seeger, Rosa Parks, Woody Guthrie, and others studied nonviolent resistance. Peggy Seeger and the founders of Rounder Records, Ken Irwin, Marion Layton Levy, and Bill Nolan, among other Southeast organizations and individuals who have served their local communities. SERFA adopted this yearly tradition of continuing to give SERFA awards in that original spirit of which Kari continued to be part of that committee. However, in 2022, in which Kari is coincidentally celebrating her 50th year in roots and acoustic music, the SERFA board, in addition to giving the now annual SERFA Awards, is also honoring Kari's own legacy of her service to SERFA, in which, again, annually she'll be choosing and presenting a special recipient to receive her original Kari Estrin Founding President's Award. Our first award this evening goes to Ed Snodderly. Presenting the award for Ed will be Denise Williams. She's the operator of the Hillbilly Haiku Concert Series. It's a house concert series. And she's also a former member and very valued former member of our SERFA board.
Hey SERFA, this is Denise Williams, recent past board member. I get to introduce one of the 2020 SERFA Award honorees. We would have presented last year had we had a conference, but we all know how that went. So 1 year late, but just as heartfelt. Ed Snodderly is a musician and songwriter from Johnson City, Tennessee. Using images from his Appalachian raising combined with his musical backbone, Ed's forte is creating original, eclectic, beautiful songs. He plays guitar, dobro, mandolin, banjo, and other stringed instruments. Sam Bush, Jerry Douglas, John Cowan, Missy Raines are a few who have recorded Ed's songs. But this is really only the tip of the iceberg with Ed. There is so much more beneath the surface to discover. Born in East Tennessee, Ed's love of music and his ability to inspire others began with his own grandfather Gaines, an old-time fiddler. Together with his father on guitar and his uncles playing fiddle, piano, and banjo, the Snodderly family band played for the same square dances back in the 1930s that the then young Roy Acuff played on alternate weekends. Ed's family were tobacco and cattle farmers, and music was an inherent part of their life. His down-to-earth outlook and artistry draws from that rich musical heritage. Ed was inspired as a youngster by country artists including Flatt and Scruggs and the Wilburn Brothers. Acquiring his first guitar in 1964, he formed a band with neighborhood friends and spent the next 6 years rehearsing. His professional debut came in 1970. In the 70s, Ed spread his wings to take advantage of a deal with Philo Records, then moved to Boston, later migrating briefly to the West Coast to record another album. But Snodderly's roots called him home to Johnson City in 1976 when he and a friend decided that East Tennessee needed a quality listening venue, and the Down Home Pig and Parlor was born. Surviving through numerous ups and downs in the music business, the Down Home in Johnson City has presented the finest in Southern and national artists for more than 3 decades. It remains to this day a true listening room, providing an Oakwood, intimate setting for a wide range of artists from Townes Van Zandt to Willie Dixon to Doc Watson, John Hartford, Billy Joe Shaver, and so many more. They've hosted theater, political rallies, writer series, and poetry slams. While the pandemic has temporarily silenced the music within the Down Home, Ed has been focused on keeping the venue viable for when people can again safely gather for live music. He's kept busy doing renovations to the venerable old building, and he partnered with Visit Johnson City to host 2 drive-in concerts last year. Featuring the Steel Drivers and Scott Miller, these drive-in concerts gave the community a safe, distance way to enjoy live music while supporting the entertainment industry. Still going strong and hoping to reopen in a limited capacity manner this June, the Down Home remains committed to bringing good music to good folks. As Ed continued with his various musical projects, it was in the 90s that he would join forces with Eugene Wolfe in a duo known as the Brother Boys. Although Ed and Eugene are not related by blood, the blend of their vocals shows that they were born to sing together, instantly bringing to mind the heartfelt harmonies of country music's brother duos. Joined by Missy Raines on bass and Roger Rasnick on guitar, the Brother Boys created a unique hybrid of country, folk, pop, bluegrass, swing, and rockabilly that was dubbed New Hillbilly Music. The Brother Boys were acknowledged critically for a decade, releasing 2 classic recordings on the Sugar Hill label, one of which was produced by Jerry Douglas. They continue to play several much-anticipated concerts every year. Alongside his musical endeavors, Ed has also been an actor for most of his life, including stints with theater companies such as the Denver Center Theater, State Theater of Virginia, and Barter Theater. In 2007, he acted, played guitar, mandolin, dobro, and fiddle in the musical Fire on the Mountain at Actors Theater of Louisville, Kentucky. His most famous role was in the music movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?, where millions saw Ed's fiddling take center stage in the character of the village idiot. These days, along with his musician, actor, and venue owner hats, Ed also gives back as an adjunct faculty member at East Tennessee State University in Johnson City, where he teaches dobro, guitar, and songwriting. He continues to play gigs and festivals, and I can personally attest wonderful house concerts as he passes along his wealth of accomplishment and talent in the world of Southern roots-based music. This all circles back around to Ed's songs. Ed is always conjuring, writing, editing his next song. I've heard him say it all begins with a first line that makes you want to hear more. That first line has to grab you. A new batch of songs to be produced by R.S. Field is taking shape. Not too surprisingly, Ed shared that they seem to be turning out to have a Southern-based identity. When Nashville's Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum unveiled its new building in 2001, Ed was permanently honored when lyrics from his song The Diamond Stream were featured on the wall in the rotunda that displays all of the inductees' plaques. So powerful was the impact of Snodderly's lyrics that they also inspired a striking feature of the hall, a small waterway just under the handrail of the spiral staircase leading from the Hall of Honor down to the main lobby. The institution could have chosen any one of hundreds of legendary and renowned songwriters to distill the essence of what the museum embodies, but it was the simple eloquence of Snodderly's pen that earned this eminent honor. With much respect and affection, we proudly bestow SERFA's highest honors to one of our best, Eddie Lynn Snodderly. Congratulations, Ed.
Hello there. Thank you very much for this recognition. It means a lot, and I know a lot of people make SERFA what it is, and I love SERFA and have been a part of it for a good number of years, and so thanks to Denise Williams for the work she does. And through the years, people that have been supportive of me, like Kari Estrin and Betty Frederickson. Mike Drudge got me to do something years ago. I guess it was called SERFA, and I don't even remember where that was. Artmenius, and there was a lot of other folks too to say thank you to. It's a good group of people that I'm part of the recipients for 2020. William Ferris, oh man, and Barry Pauls. These guys are heavy hitters, so I'm glad to be part of their little group for 2020. The Storied South, and I've been lucky. Barry Pauls helped me with a little street cred because we did. I did 2 records with Sugar Hill back in the 90s, and he's a good one. I love him very much. He made records, you know, with Red Clay Ramblers, Doc Watson, John Starling, Mike Cross. Anyway, the list goes on, and it's an important list. So, yeah. So I'm really appreciate the recognition, as we all do. We all like recognition. Anyway, but I'm sitting here at the one of the things that I do is play music and do this and that, and then I also am part of the Down Home, and I figured, why don't I just show you the Down Home right quick? Don't worry, I'm not going over 5 minutes. Okay, so here's the Down Home. Yeah, I'll show you. It's a mess right now because we're just getting out of a pandemic. So we're buffing the floor, and I put new ceiling tiles in. And if you've never been here before, this gives you a little chance to go, oh, the Down Home, that's what it looks like. A lot of barn wood, and there's a lot of good people that come in here. And there's been a lot of good musicians, and we've lost some of those musicians this past year. Tony Rice played here forever. That's how I first met Kari Estrin back in the 80s. She was managing Tony. Billy Joe Shaver. John Prine never played here. And then a person from the South, Andrina Belcher, she passed away in August. And Studs Terkel called her a national treasure. She both told stories, performed, and worked at the bar here. Which, let me show you the bar right quick. Yeah, we have initial tiles here. And it's tiles of initials of people who have been part of the Down Home, who've made it happen since 1976. Here's Brother Dave, the Road Company. Here's the Red Clay Ramblers. They were the first band to play here. Here's Tank. He's kind of known as our founder. But it's the Down Home. And in 2018, I was able to do a showcase at SERFA at Montreat, and I met a lot of you folks who are promoters and music lovers and all of that good stuff. And then I also met Jim Rooney and had really some good conversations with Jim. And we talked about his days working Club 47. And it really kind of endeared me to go, you can play music, perform music, write music, do your thing, and then also have a venue. So it's like, why not? So if you get a chance, come to the Down Home. For those people I met when I did the showcase, reach out. You know, it's going to be time for gigs. But really and truly, let me also send my condolences to the Station Inn family for the loss of J.T. Gray. Down Home and the Station Inn have been like kissing cousins through the years. But once again, it's a really nice honor that you gave me with the recognition. So thank you, and I look forward to next year. All right.
All right. Our next award will be presented to William Ferris by Tom Rankin, a photographer, folklorist, longtime director of the Duke Center for Documentary Studies, and a board member of radio station WHUP.
Well, it's a real honor and privilege to be able to introduce Bill Ferris here today, an old friend, somebody I greatly admire, and to do this on behalf of the Southeast Regional Folk Alliance, an organization that I greatly admire. Bill's contributions to folk music in the Southeast are legendary, long-lasting, and so emblematic of the work he's set out to do early on in his career. I met Bill in 1980, and I was a young graduate student in folklore, and he, like he's done so many times in his career, was just generous, willing to try to help somebody get started, connect me to other people. And that's been just an abiding part of Bill's career and his impact, really, throughout everything he's done. I think his work really begins on his family farm in Warren County, Mississippi, near Vicksburg, where Bill grew up adjacent to all kinds of creativity from his own family, from writers nearby, Eudora Welty, Richard Wright, seeing those connections, seeing the connections between music and storytelling among people that worked and lived close by. But also he saw connections and with across genres. He saw the relationship of literature to the blues, of Sunday painting that his mother's friends might be doing, to what was going on in the museum world. Eudora Welty's photographs, he saw connections between those and Walker Evans' photographs, and so on and on it goes. He saw the connections between Saturday night and Sunday morning, between the blues and gospel. But he also saw, so importantly, that there was a disparity between black and white lives, between opportunities, between what people had and how people were treated. He saw that in Mississippi, and he saw that throughout this country. And I think he's always been trying to bring a kind of parity, a kind of equality, through his own activism, through getting people like B.B. King around the table at a place like Yale University when he taught there, to be at the same table, having the same conversations as the Shakespeare scholars, that the blues musician and the wisdom and brilliance and genius of the vernacular music of a place like Mississippi was just or more important than those academically trained folks and their brilliance. And that has really been a model for so many other scholars, folklorists, activists. We've all learned from it. It's fueled us as it has fueled Bill. His field work is the bedrock of all of this, going into to homes of musicians, paying attention to what they pay attention to, listening carefully, recording carefully, issuing albums, radio shows, spreading the music out and the lessons that the music carries out. I think of his work with Son Thomas as emblematic of how Bill works. Son Thomas, a blues musician from Leland, Mississippi. Bill could have easily just focused on his music, but he was just as interested in Son's storytelling as he was his music. He was just as interested in Son's sculpture as he was his storytelling. And he saw it all as one big piece, something we need to know fully. If we want to know the music, we got to know the person fully. And I think that that's been something we can all learn from. When we look at his box set, his recent box set from Dust to Digital, we see some of that. We see films and photographs and narrative recordings and recordings of gospel and recordings of the blues, all there together. It's like a Sunday dinner with all the courses and all the vegetables, the kind of meal we want to be invited to, the kind of meal we want to know how to prepare, the kind of meal we very much want to consume. And so it's just, it's always a pleasure to talk about Bill's work, to thank him for not only what he's done for me, but what he has done for the world of folk music, what he's done in the academy, and what he's done in the small main streets of this country, to help us all understand just what rich fabric surrounds us, and the cultural richness that abounds. Bill's not finished working by any stretch, but it's great to take a moment and acknowledge all the great things he's done. So congratulations, Bill. Thanks so much to the Folk Alliance, and it's been fun to be here, even virtually. Take care.
It is a special honor to be recognized by the Southeast Regional Folk Alliance, SERFA, for contributions to folk music in the Southeast. I am especially grateful to my friend Art Minius, whom I first met when my wife Marcy and I moved to Chapel Hill in 2002. Art and Becky invited us to be their guests at Merle Fest, and we went with Bill and Bobby Malone and my brother Gray and his wife Jan Ferris. Art is a rainmaker for Southern music, and he has enriched my life in more ways than I can count. SERFA is legendary for its support of folk music in the American South. And my friends who are part of your work include Ken Irwin, Bill Nowlin, Miriam Leighton-Levy, Alice Gerard, Cy Kahn, and Barry Poss. And like each of them, I have donated my archive of recordings to the Southern Folklife Collection, which Steve Weiss directs at the University of North Carolina. This award reminds me of my friend Ola Belle Reed's song, My Epitaph, in which she sings, "When I go from this life, let me go in peace. The flowers that you give me, please give them today. Don't sing my praises after I'm gone." As a teacher and scholar, I have explored the power of memory and sense of place in the American South. Music and song anchored my life with special power. As a child, I attended services at Rose Hill Church with its Black congregation on the farm where I grew up in Mississippi. I learned to sing Dr. Watts' hymns and loved the powerful sermons of Reverend Isaac Thomas. As I grew older, I realized there were no hymnals in the church, and when the families were gone, their music would disappear. That inspired me to record, photograph, and film the services that led me to a career as a folklorist. I tell my students, follow your heart, and you will be both happy and successful. Songs marked my life like signposts along the highway. As a student in the 60s working for civil rights, "We shall overcome" was my mantra. When I filed for a discharge from the Army as a conscientious objector in 1969, B.B. King's "The Thrill Is Gone" captured my feelings as he sang, "The thrill is gone, the thrill is gone away from me." For more than 40 years, I taught a course on Southern music at Jackson State University, Yale University, the University of Mississippi, and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I always opened my first class with the African proverb that says, "When an old woman or man dies, a library burns to the ground." The music we celebrate is anchored in those libraries. And I also brought my old Gibson guitar to that first class and closed with 3 songs: a blues, "Baby, Please Don't Go," Hank Williams's "Honky Tonk Blues," and Gene Vincent's "Bebopalula" as a window to show my students what lay ahead in their course. Music defines my work today more than ever. My recent publication, Voices of Mississippi, is a box set produced by Lance and April Ledbetter at Dust to Digital that includes a book, 3 CDs of my field recordings of blues, gospel, and storytelling, and a DVD of my documentary films that won 2 Grammy Awards in 2019. And earlier this year, I published I Am a Man, photographs of the Civil Rights Movement, 1960 to 1970, a book that accompanies an exhibition I curated that opened in Montpellier, France in 2018, and this past January opened at the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum in Jackson. Music has defined my life at every step of the way, and this award means more to me than words can express. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. All right, up next, our last 2020 SERFA Award will be presented to Barry Post by J. Orr, who this summer will reach 19 years in his second stint at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum, where he is Executive Senior Director for Research, Editorial, and Content. Orr has also worked 13 years at the Nashville Banner and CMT.com.
Hello, friends in SERFA. Glad to be with you tonight. This is Jay Orr from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm deeply honored to be asked by my good friend and colleague Barry Post, whom I respect and love so much, to introduce him as he accepts the prestigious award from SERFA for contributions to folk music in the southeastern United States. The award recognizes the good work he has done over a distinguished career as founder and CEO of Sugar Hill Records. I work at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. We have a large record collection there that we use for research of around 250,000 sound recordings, and many of those recordings come from the early years of country music in the 1920s and 1930s, and include records by the Carter family, Jimmy Rogers, Hank Williams, Lefty Frizzell, and Bob Wills. And those are all a testament to the A&R men who sought out the talent and recorded it for posterity. In the same way, and also in that collection, and just as important to understanding the role of country music in our society, are more recent recordings issued by Barry Post on Sugar Hill, including titles of great consequence by artists like Doc Watson, Dolly Parton, and Guy Clark, and many others on Sugar Hill. That is why we honor Barry tonight by recording and releasing the hundreds of titles that appeared on Sugar Hill, focused, high-quality releases that were held to a uniformly high standard. Barry has documented and preserved some of the most beautiful and significant music of our time. Like the A&R professionals before him, Ralph Peer, Art Satterley, and Frank Walker, and others, Barry is a cultural mediator, an agent of change. Barry did not set out to be a record man. When he was a young man, that was not his dream. He was born in Brantford, Ontario. He attended York University in nearby Toronto and distinguished himself academically. In 1968, he came south to Durham, that's Durham, North Carolina, not to start a record label, which he would do later, but to do graduate study in sociology at Duke. Barry was an academic rock star. He was really a catch for Duke University because he had done so well at York. He was invited to come as a prestigious and elite James B. Duke Graduate Fellow. You could say, I guess, that Barry was to Duke graduate studies what basketball player and hotly recruited individual Zion Williamson was to Duke basketball, a blue chip recruit destined to bring greatness to the Blue Devil Nation. Not longer after Barry arrived, though, he fell deeply in love. He heard a siren song coming out of the hills and hollers of the North Carolina mountains, and it seemed to call to him. Eventually, the romance distracted him, and he yielded to it. He learned to play the banjo from the likes of Tommy Thompson and Fred Cockrum. He put aside his dissertation, though he was near completion, and he founded Sugar Hill in 1978 in his Durham condo to issue records of contemporary acoustic music with roots and tradition. Like Ahmet Ertegun, Sam Phillips, the Chess brothers, Barry became known for championing the music he loved. He became closely associated with the music, and it was music he understood. Chris Hillman, who was a member of the Byrds, the Flying Burrito Brothers, and the Nassus, among other musical groups, recorded solo albums for Sugar Hill beginning in the early 80s. Chris published his autobiography last year, a book called Time Between, and in it he recalls doing business with Barry at Sugar Hill. This is a quote from Chris's book. The beautiful part about my experience at the label was my close relationship with Barry Paus. Here was a man of honesty and integrity in the record business. What a refreshing concept. Indeed, what a refreshing concept, and what a great man. It is my great honor to introduce the great record man himself, Barry Paus, who richly deserves the SERFA Award that he receives tonight. I give you Barry Paus.
Well, thank you, J.R., for that lovely and heartfelt introduction. I am touched to have this award presented by you. And hello to everyone else out there. It's wonderful to be here with you, even if it's the technology that is allowing us to gather together in these upside-down times. And since everything else is scrambled these days, including my head, forgive me, I have notes. I am deeply honored to receive this recognition from SERFA. It's especially gratifying because the honor comes from the very region of the country where I have lived and worked these past 50 years. The American Southeast has unfailingly provided me with a richly layered and diverse cultural landscape for exploring folk music of all stripes. When I began my ventures in this musical arena, there was no Folk Alliance, no Americana Music Association, and no IBMA either. None of these organizations were around to provide identity pegs for us musical adventurers. But no matter. With apologies to Justice Potter, folk music in all its forms is a little like pornography. Easy to argue about, hard to define, but you know it when you see it, or in this case, hear it. I must say, I didn't have a very conventional career path. I came to North Carolina in 1968 to attend graduate school. My academic work had nothing to do with music, but here I discovered a flourishing traditional music scene in the Durham-Chapel Hill area with other like-minded folks. Tommy Thompson, Tom Carter, the Fuzzy Mountain String Band, the New Academic String Band, and many others. And being around them led me to the musicians they learned from. I became passionate about the music and passionate about its makers. And I went from writing about scientific outsiders and social constructs to playing in living rooms and on front porches and stages with Fred Cockrum, Tommy Jarrell, Kyle Creed, Ernest East, Gaither Carlton, and a host of others whom I visited all across the Southeast. So with my dissertation well underway and teaching offers in hand, I decided instead to follow my heart and respond to a job listing in Dave Freeman's County Sales newsletter for a graphic artist. Explain that decision to your dissertation committee. I even admitted to Dave I didn't know the first thing about graphic arts, but I love the music. He hired me anyway and gave me the wherewithal to visit older musicians, many of whom made records in the 20s and 30s. Mind you, that's the 1920s and 30s for you young'uns. And then to reissue their 78 RPM recordings on LPs. I believe that same passion also accounts for the audacity of thinking I could start a record label to highlight a very different kind of music I was hearing at the time. I was drawn to artists who grew up with traditional music, but were young enough to be influenced by the music of the present day. I thought that the tension between the old and the new, the traditional and the contemporary, made for some exciting new music, and I wanted to be a part of it. Sugar Hill Records was to reflect my passion for contemporary music with traditional roots, but that focus certainly provided a large enough tent for me to embrace an incredible group of brilliant artists, ranging from the incomparable elder statesman Doc Watson to wunderkind Chris Thiele, who was just 12 years old when we started working together, from Guy Clark and Townes Van Zandt to Jerry Douglas and Sam Bush, from Tim O'Brien and Robert Earl Keane to Robin and Linda Williams and our very own Ed Snodderly here with us tonight, and from Dolly Parton to, well, Dolly Parton. After all, she can only be compared to herself. I would go on and name the other artists who were hugely important to me and tell their stories, but I would certainly get the digital equivalent of the stage hook. So just let me say, it is the artists who make the music to whom I am the most indebted. They had something important to say, they needed to be heard, and I wanted to be part of their creative lives because it really mattered. And so I want to thank them, and I want to thank SERFA for this recognition of our work together. Thank you very much.
All right. Presenting our first award for 2021 to Deidre McCalla is Kari Estrin, who, besides playing an integral part in founding SERFA, has had a 40-year career in radio promotion, artist development and management, A&R services and publicity services, and concert and festival promotion. Welcome.
Sometimes what seems to us like an ordinary life is actually extraordinary to others. Deirdre would be the first person to say her life is not extraordinary, but truly it is. She's paved the way for future generations as she's just followed her own heart and instincts. Deirdre's legacy, in part, is as someone who helped continue to bring a movement to fruition. Back in 1972, while majoring in theater at Vassar, nonetheless, Deirdre's music was in her core. It was at a chance meeting over a Thanksgiving dinner at her house while Deirdre was singing to herself in the kitchen that her uncle, an executive for Roulette Records, you remember them, Tommy James and the Shondells, heard Deirdre sing. But Deirdre, we all have longed for that chance meeting, but Deirdre truly had the goods to get signed, and signed she did get. So by her junior year, Deirdre had her first record out, an LP called Fur Coats and Blue Jeans. However, there was a catch. With her picture on the cover, when black DJs saw the album, they'd put it on, and they'd say, this is kind of white pop folk and not R&B, and wouldn't play it. Conversely, when the white DJ saw the cover, they just wouldn't even put it on because they thought it would be R&B and she didn't get the airplay. However, none of this stopped Deirdre from pursuing her own music. So upon graduation from Vassar, instead of pursuing acting, she and a friend who acted as her manager, became her manager, hopped into a 64 Buick with a guitar and a sound system and set off touring. Deirdre honed her skills in these listening rooms that she wishes were listening rooms. They were actually very tough cells with people drinking and talking, but she was determined to play her music, and she navigated skills that helped her through many, many years of performing in these situations. However, when Deirdre eventually attended a National Women's Music Festival in 1975, it had a profound effect on her career. In those days, attending a concert that was predominantly lesbian was not safe. And the women's movement that Deirdre became involved in as an early educator and member eventually changed all that for the present LGBTQ women of today. After being on the road for a couple of years, Deirdre continued to perform as a self-taught guitarist, but felt that in her own drive for excellence, she really wanted to be a better guitarist. So she enrolled in the Wisconsin Conservatory of Music for 2 years, one of only 2 students that were female in the conservatory out of 30 or 40. Deirdre honed her skills there to become a more fully realized musician. But after she got the tools she needed from the conservatory, Deirdre drifted back into the folk music scene and now moved to Greenwich Village with her roommate, Irene Young, now the famous photographer. Deirdre found herself being hired to do the sound at Folk City because she had taken the sound system on the road and was familiar with it. at a time when women were not accepted as sound engineers. But Deirdre didn't care. She just got on with it, and she faced whatever challenges she could in the best way she knew how, and didn't let anything stop her from having a blast doing the sound, working with legends, hanging out with everyone, and doing her own performances. But in 1983, about a year or so later, Deirdre was again restless. She's got that musician thing going, touring out on the road, but this time she wanted to go to California. Her roommate Irene was going to be working with Olivia Records, and Deirdre decided to go and check out that scene. Deirdre made a decision to hire also LGBTQ producer Teresa Troll to produce her next record, and Olivia Records took notice of Deirdre's talent with Teresa at the helm. Deirdre went out on tour to support that album, but not with all the glamour that one would think of being signed to a California record label. Instead, the Greyhound bus was her tour guide, and wherever it went, she went with her guitar and a box of LPs and a suitcase, and she went on the road, building her audiences one by one. She found that she was able to go to these venues and help to bring the LGBTQ community together as a safe place to gather. And Deirdre was one of the early people who helped build that environment, as I mentioned before, for future generations to come. Don't Doubt It was Deirdre's first album, and then A Little Luck in 1987. By 1993, she put out Everyday Heroes and Heroines, and that was also the year that Deirdre decided to become a single parent. She homeschooled her son, took him on the road, and still sold over 50,000 albums while doing so. But by the time her son wanted to go to public school, Deirdre got off the road. She had moved to Georgia in 1994, and her son decided to go to school, public school, in 2007. And so Deirdre got off the road and stayed home with her son and found a new life, mostly at home. But always a musician, now Deirdre is putting together, again, a new album for all of us to hear, truly finding a new chapter in her life. Deidre McCalla has been one of the cornerstones of the women's movement, paving the way for other LGBTQ performers and for women, while also being determined that color would not stand in her way in her desire to pursue her own musical dream. In fact, Deirdre inspired others with her own commitment to do just that, to build a community for future generations to follow, whether as a Black woman, a woman, or an LGBTQ woman. We are proud Deirdre lives in our SERFA region and has become part of our SERFA community, while also extending our highest honor to her. Deirdre?
Hello. I don't have my guitar today. I have notes, so this is kind of different. Thank you, Kari, and thank you to the awards committee for this 2021 SERFA Award. I am truly honored, and as Kari suggested, perhaps a bit bemused by the attention. Most days I am simply putting one foot in front of the other, trying to be of use, which is a phrase from a Marge Piercy poem that I have up on my office wall. Most of us have reached an age where, even as we're moving forward with new projects, as I am hoping to get a new album out by the end of the year, we're glancing in a rearview mirror that is running a stream of images of what has happened in our past. I am fortunate to have been born into a time where my gifts and my guitar could find their voice and become part of a soundtrack for a cultural revolution. I had my heart set on becoming a performer since I was 6 years old. So it was only natural that this child of the 60s would find affinity in the women's music movement and the relentless push to create opportunities for women in all aspects of the music industry, to move women beyond the prescribed role of chick singer and be seen and valued as instrumentalists, recording engineers, sound engineers, lighting designers, distributors, record company executive, artist managers, road managers, concert promoters, radio DJs. With festivals and concerts large and small, a lesbian community hungry for connection and safe visibility found music and performers that honored and celebrated our lives. And as those performers found allies in the progressive folk community, our audiences were welcomed and embraced in those venues and widened the ticket buying pool for all concerned. My photographer friend, Irene Young, who has photographed probably just about every artist in women's music, along with a good portion of artists in contemporary folk like Will Ackerman, Suzanne Vega, Lucy Kaplansky, Cliff Everhart, the list is very long. Irene is currently getting her work together for publication in book form. And the other day she was lamenting on what she hadn't saved and how much had been lost. And I reminded her, Irene, we were just trying to get through each day and perhaps make a better future, but pay the rent in the meantime. So it really wasn't in our minds to be saving stuff because it was history. We weren't thinking that way. Looking in the rearview mirror, I realized that is exactly what we were doing. I see it in the documentary on women's music, Radical Harmonies. I read it in Jamie Anderson's History of Women's Music, An Army of Lovers, or in historian Bonnie Morris's deep dive into women's music festival culture, Eden, Built by Eve. And to be perfectly honest, yes, when it's a book, I do search the index before I even read the book to see if my name is going to be in there. And it is. I was privileged to be part of a pretty amazing time. So thank you, SERFA, for honoring the journey of this dreadlock singer-songwriter troubadour and recognizing my work as part and parcel of SERFA's mission to create a folk music community that is diverse and inclusive.
Thank you so much, Deidre. All right, our final award of 2021 is going to be presented to David Holt by Josh Goforth, who is a highly accomplished old-time bluegrass and swing musician, multi-instrumentalist, and he is also the folk music director at the Academy of Arts in Asheville, North Carolina.
Hi, my name's Josh Goforth, and I'm so happy to be a part of this year's SERFA Awards, introducing a friend of mine and one of my mentors and heroes. See, I get to get on stage and perform songs and tell stories from folks from my community, the one I grew up in. And doing that as a career would have never been possible without Mr. David Holt. See, my family came in the 1700s to Madison County bringing all those stories and songs. And at 12 years old, I was just a skinny kid who played some guitar and sang a few songs. I didn't understand the value of being surrounded by this rich cultural artistic heritage. That is, until I saw David Holt perform for the first time. See, he came to my middle school to perform, and watching David that day, I was totally mesmerized. He sang these songs and told stories about folks who were my family members who had already passed away. I'd never got to meet them. He even showed pictures he had taken of them. It was like he was introducing them to me for the first time and really breathing life into them. And, you know, that day I got to get up on stage and play a song with him, and he gave me several of his recordings, and he was so encouraging and told me to just keep going, keep practicing. Well, I took that to heart, and I went home and I started practicing, and I practiced practically 5 hours every day, learning all the songs off his recordings, until finally, after I finished high school, he gave me a call and asked me to join a band that he was putting together. Now, I didn't know that that would be a start of a 20-year musical relationship with my mentor and hero. Now, getting to perform next to David every night, I got to see firsthand the joy in people's faces when they got to meet folks like Etta Baker and hear songs from her, or folks they might have heard of like Doc Watson, or some folks they probably hadn't heard of like the great ballad singer Dellie Norton from Sodom, North Carolina, where my dad's family grew up. See, that's David's legacy, is learning the music of these Southern Mountain people and bringing it to millions around the world. Through him directing and founding the first Appalachian music program at Warren Wilson College, through his vision of producing thought-provoking television shows like Fire on the Mountain and Folkways and David Holt State of Music, through radio programs like Riverwalk Jazz, through more than 20 recordings, 4 published books, thousands and thousands of performances at some of the best venues around the world like the Grand Ole Opry, David has entertained, educated, and worked to preserve this artistic, cultural legacy of the people of the Southern Mountains for generations to come. Now, David's won numerous accolades. You know, he's won 4 Grammy Awards. He was inducted into the North Carolina Music Hall of Fame. But the thing that I love most about David and the thing that influences me most about his work is that he never stops learning. And it's that joy of learning and bringing that to other folks. That's what this music is all about. Now, I'd like to close out with my favorite story of David's, which is the first night he played the Grand Ole Opry. Now, he had his banjo built, this beautiful banjo built special, and had a white suit on, and he was ready to go. And the bands that came on before him had this big kind of massive sound, and he got worried about getting out there with that banjo. And so David decided to play the paper bag, an instrument that he had learned from Morris Norton, from that little community of Sodom where I grew up. To think that David Holt's first song on the Grand Ole Opry was a song learned from somebody in my community, I can look on that with pride. David has been a mentor, a friend. He's been like a second father to me, and I can't think of anyone who deserves this award more than Mr. David Holt.
Josh, thanks for that nice introduction. It's just been a blessing working with you for the last 20 years. We've had a lot of great times, a lot of great concerts. And thanks to the folks at SERFA for giving me this award. It was 1967, and I was 21 years old. And I heard that Carl Sprague was still alive. Now, Carl Sprague was the first cowboy singer ever to record. Here's a picture of him in 1925. He recorded When the Work's All Done This Fall, and it sold almost 900,000 copies. Pretty amazing. Well, I heard that he lived in Bryan, Texas, not far from where my parents lived. And I called him up, and he invited me over. Very few people came to see him, and so he was happy to have a young person visit. He showed me the cowboy lick on the guitar. He showed me how to play the harmonica, too, in the cowboy style, something like this. And I realized this is amazing. If you have mentors that aren't that famous, you can call them up and go see them and learn from them, be friends with them. That was a really exciting idea to me. And I wanted to meet more, but I wasn't a folklorist. I didn't really know how to get to know any of the old timers or particularly cowboy singers. So I was going to college at UC Santa Barbara, and Ralph Stanley came out to the campus. And I went to his concert, and it just knocked me out. The thing that really got me going and just fired me up was his playing the clawhammer style that he had learned from his mother, an old song called Bound to Ride. I said, I got to learn how to do that. So I went up to Ralph after the concert and I said, how do I learn that old-time clawhammer style? He said, you need to go back to Tennessee or Virginia, North Carolina, lots of banjo players back there. So I left that very summer. It was 1969, and my friend Steve Keith and I loaded up my old 52 Chevy pickup truck and made our way back south. Where most people were going to Woodstock, we went to Woodstick. It was great, man. There were fiddlers conventions every weekend, and we went to a different one every weekend, met hundreds of musicians. It was a vibrant tradition, spirited music, raw playing. It was just something to see. I had never seen anything like it before. And they weren't just playing banjos, guitars, and fiddles. They were playing stuff like stump fiddles and paper bags and mouth bows and quills made of river cane. It was just remarkable. So in 1973, I decided to move to Asheville, North Carolina. Asheville because it's such a beautiful place and so many kind people, but it was full of great musicians too. I really realized I enjoyed entertaining. And so I started performing and bringing the old music to the, modern audiences, and it seemed to work. Now, 50 years later, I've done thousands of concerts and played for over 2 million people. One of the highlights of my career was playing with Doc Watson for 14 years on the road. It was great being with Doc. We won 2 Grammys for a 3 CD set we put out called Legacy. I learned a lot from Doc. He was like a musical father to me. I once asked him, I said, Doc, how do you make a career last a long time? He said, son, don't do too much. I said, really, what do you mean? He said, just make enough money to pay for your family and pay your bills, and then the rest you can do or not do the way you want to do it. He said, just do what you want to do, but don't do too much. It'll wear you out. Other advice from Doc? Son, always pick up your feet when you walk. Good advice for a blind man and a sighted man too. He said, and when you're out on the road, always keep your eye open for a good key lime pie. They're hard to find. Now, television has been very important to me, and I've done quite a few shows over the years, and I feel like that's one of the best ways to bring traditional music to the public. I've got a show now on PBS called David Holt's State of Music. I hope you've seen it. And if you haven't, check it out. It comes out this spring, season 5. So there's 29 whole shows that you can catch up on. This season, we've got Keb Mo, Rob Ickes and Trey Hensley, John McCutcheon, Taj Mahal, Muriel Anderson, some great folks. Now, this award comes at a perfect time for me because I've had a really rough go here the last little bit. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and it pretty much ended my playing at a professional level. It's shocking, really sad to me, and unstoppable. As I like to say, when God smashes the door on your fingers, he always opens a window so you can hear Blind Willie Johnson in the next room. My advice, be good and get better. And give credit where credit is due. I notice that not many people do that, but we've got to lift ourselves up. We've got to grab our own bootstraps and pull ourselves up, because the more work we make, the more work there'll be and more work for everyone. I'm often asked, why preserve this music? What's the big deal? And I say because it's really good medicine. It heals us in ways that we'll never understand. It's deep. So enjoy every note you play and always keep your eye out for a good key lime pie.
I don't know about all of you, but I am so inspired right now by all of our award recipients, what they had to say, what they had to share, what they accomplished in their lives. It's just wonderful, and I appreciate all of the recipients who were part of this, and I also wanted to thank all the presenters that gave these awards. I'd also like to give a special thanks to the awards committee. Art Minius, Kari Estrin, Denise Williams, Michael Stock, and myself worked together very well to bring these awards, this program to fruition. So thank all of you for helping SERFA rise and shine in this occasion. So I do want to tell you that our open mic is up next in 15 minutes. Grady Ormsby will be presenting for our second session of the open mic. And then after that, we have late night showcases. There is a link in your schedule where you can take a look at that page. I encourage you to go and visit those artists who are showcasing their talent. It's going to be really good, great live music. And I wanted to bring up about the other option, which is the exhibit hall. We have exhibit hall and live showcases tomorrow going on as well at 2 different times. So please check out that schedule, visit, talk to people, and thanks again for coming to our awards ceremony. Bye, everyone.